Sometimes in talking to individuals, sometimes they say things like, I don't think I'm as intelligent as my friends, or I don't feel like I'm that funny. And they compare themselves to other people. And unfortunately, we see comparisons going on all the time, don't we? We're kind of conditioned to comparison. If you look at ads on television, there's always a comparison. The doctor says this pill is better than this pill by a 3-to-1, margin. We compare. Oh yeah, I liked the recent Top Gun movie better than the first one, or I like the first one better. There's always comparisons. We see it in our educational system. It becomes all about grades, right? We compare the A students, the B students, the C students. There's a comparison going on, and sometimes students are more motivated to get the grade than they are to actually learn. It's been suggested that it could be the B and C students are learning more than the A students who know how to get A's but aren't really learning. I remember when I went to Norfolk Collegiate High School, they used to post on the wall in 7th grade who made the honor society. And many of us would run down the hall and take a look. Am I on the list? Did I make the honor roll? I'm in honor roll. And it fostered sort of competition. We see this comparison leading to competition in the workplace, right? People are competing for jobs. People are competing for promotions. People are being graded and so on to see if they can move up. And this comparison leading to competition creates a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of tension for people. And I don't think it's necessary. It seems to me that every person is a unique expression of spirit. And if we are true to ourselves and true to letting spirit express uniquely as us, everything we need is going to unfold in the right and perfect way. I think that we're probably more conditioned to this comparison than we even realize. Do you ever look at someone else and think something like, boy, she sure is attractive. I wish I was that attractive. Or do you ever look at someone else and think, I wish I was that smart? Do you ever take tests to see how your scores compare to other people? Or play certain games just to see how you do in relationship to others because you're comparing yourself? Do you ever look to see what other people are wearing before you decide what kind of clothes you're going to buy or what kind of outfits you're going to wear? These are all comparisons that can make us feel inadequate. You ever hear a parent talk to one of her children or his children saying, why can't you be more like your sister, and be more well-behaved? The comparisons are going on all the time, which creates stress. It creates a sense of inadequacy. In fact, I think all these comparisons are a result of a feeling of inadequacy. If we don't feel good inside of ourselves, then we may look at others to see, how are we doing compared to someone else, in order to find our own sense of self-worth, trying to see how we measure up with other people. We do this with intelligence. We may look at our IQ test and think, well, how do I measure up? We might look back when we were in high school or college to see which ranking were we in the class to decide, am I intelligent or not? Am I smart or not? You see, people tend to think, where are they? Are they smarter than certain people or less smart, in order to determine how intelligent they are? They do it through comparison. They do it through attractiveness. They look at others. They look in, excuse me, beauty contests, or they look on Facebook pages where people's photos are probably doctored up. I mean, photographers can do amazing things nowadays, can't they? They can make you look a lot better than you may think you look with a few touch-ups. And people are looking in social media, Instagram and so on, and they're comparing themselves with other people's pictures and not feeling so good about themselves. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why younger people these days, kids, are experiencing more anxiety, more depression, because they're seeing everybody posting on Instagram and Facebook and other social media all this great stuff, and they're looking at their own life and they're comparing it, and they're not feeling so good. In fact, this is something that researchers have discovered, that they call it comparing upward or comparing downward. They've done studies where you answer a question. I'd like you to answer this question. I wish I were. How would you answer that question? I wish I were, like Fiddler on the Roof. I wish I were a rich man, right? I wish I were a sports star. I wish I were living in so-and-so, you know. How do you fill in the blank? And how does that make you feel? That's what the researchers ask people. How does that make you feel, asking that question? And then ask yourself this question. The researchers ask people to then answer, I'm glad I'm not, and you fill in the blank. I'm glad I'm not living on the streets, homeless. I'm glad I'm not disabled and can't walk. Whatever it is, what are you glad you're not? And they compared the answers, and they discovered that people, when they compare what the psychologists called compare upward, they feel inadequate, they feel anxious, they don't feel as good. But when they compare so-called downward, they feel grateful. They feel more complete and peaceful with who they are. Interesting study, right? It shows how comparing yourself to others, how it affects you. And the reality is, or I should say the truth is, there's no need to compare. Why compare at all? Really? Because each of us is a unique expression of spirit. And so we can recognize the facts of life. There's nothing wrong with seeing the facts, but recognize, more important, what Jesus said, judge not by appearances, but judge righteous judgment. In other words, recognize, yeah, there's a world of facts in which you can appreciate the facts. You can appreciate a person's athleticism. You can appreciate what someone looks like. You can appreciate all the varieties of people and what they're experiencing. But you can also acknowledge that you have an inner world, that there's a greater reality to you, a spiritual reality, and that you're a unique expression of that spiritual reality, and that's the most important thing, is tuning in to that reality. One of the things that the way shower Jesus said is, what's that to you? Follow me. One of the disciples was asking about someone else, and Jesus said, what's that to you? Follow me. In other words, why are you so concerned about how other people are, comparing yourself to others? In other words, we don't have to. We don't need to, unless it inspires us. If it inspires you to be more of yourself, if it inspires you to express more of your potential, great. But there's no need to compete with other people unless you find it to be fun, unless it inspires you to be more. I mentioned recently that I watched this special called The Last Dance about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Well, watching Michael Jordan was so inspiring to me. Seeing this guy develop his abilities to such a high level is inspiring. It inspired me to want to be more of myself, to develop my abilities more. See, so it's not a competition, it's an inspiration. Every one of us is here to be a unique expression. And we don't have to compete. We don't have to be better than someone. We don't have to look at other people and go, am I smarter than him? Do I have more money than her? To get our sense of worth. It's not necessary, because each one of us is unique and incomparable. You are unique and incomparable. There's only one you. There's only one you in that body. I'm not even talking about your personality. I'm not talking about your physical body. I'm not talking about you emotionally or your personality or any outer thing. I'm talking about you that's in there. Your consciousness is a unique expression of spirit. And you and I are here to allow that to express more fully. Because in doing that, there's joy, there's peace, there's fulfillment, and there's a unique expression. I believe spirit is continually expressing uniquely as each one of us every single moment. So why does it matter how we measure up to somebody else? It ultimately doesn't. Because when we're being ourselves, when we're fulfilling what we're here to do, we have whatever we need to do that. It's inherent inside of us. It's built inside of us. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson said, guidance is the continuation of the divine effort that made you in the first place. It is yours. It is you. In other words, everything you need, the guidance you need, the strength you need, the opportunities you need in order to be your unique self is inherent in you. You're an expression of spirit. So you have what you need. So why do we need to compete unless we find it fun, unless we are inspired by others to be more of ourselves? I remember years ago when I first came to New York back in '99, around that time, I'd been an ordained minister for about 6 years. I'd been speaking and teaching and all that for longer than that. And people used to come by at that time. I haven't heard this for a long time. But back then, onto the TV scene was Joel Osteen, right? From Houston, Texas. He had been behind the cameras for his dad, who was a minister, and he was working the cameras for many years. And then his dad became ill, and they said, Joel, we want you to speak. And Joel's like, I don't want to speak. I don't want to do that. But you're the right one to do it, Joel. He had other brothers and sisters. So he did, and guess what? Became a sensation and was reaching millions of people, and the ministry was growing incredibly. And I used to have people tell me, Justin, you remind me of that guy with the other Jewish sounding name, Joel Osteen. You remind me of Joel Osteen. And I used to hear that a lot. And I thought, well, that's great. You know, who wants to hear you remind them of somebody else? And that guy is reaching millions of people and is on every, you go into the bookstore and there's his book, and you turn on the TV and there he is. I didn't want to hear that. I mean, I didn't mind it. I took it as sort of a compliment, but part of me was like, oh, that's great. I'm like Joel Osteen, only he's reaching millions of people. So I had to work that out in my consciousness. Now, this was 20-some years ago, okay? It's not a problem anymore. But then it bothered me a little bit until I began to realize, why compare myself to him? Now, notice, people will compare you, right? People will put you in a box. People will say, oh, you're that kind of a person. They'll pigeonhole you. You're that kind of a person who does those kinds of things, and you get pigeonholed. Well, we can't really control what other people think, but we can control what we think. So I thought, well, I don't need to compare myself to him. Why would I do that? My path is unique. Spirit is doing something unique through and as me. It doesn't matter what it looks like. What matters is that I'm doing what is mine to do. I'm fulfilling and letting Spirit express uniquely as me. He's doing his thing, and good for him, good for the people who watch him, good for the people he reaches. Wonderful, great. He's being him, and I'm being me. And there's no comparison. We're each unique and incomparable. And that's what we're talking about today. When you look over at someone else, when you look over your shoulder and go, am I smarter than him? Am I richer than her? Am I, more attractive than them? Am I as funny? When we're looking over our shoulder, we're giving away control of our life. We're letting the outer world determine how we feel within ourselves, and it's not necessary. And I'm sure you know people, as I know people, who, because they're caught in that comparison trap, they're constantly trying to demonstrate to you how smart they are, how much they have, all this kind of stuff, because they're trying to build themselves up. They're trying to make themselves feel, well, I'm smarter than her, and I'm smarter than him, or I've got more money than them, or I'm in a more important position than they are. People are doing that, and you can sense it. But you and I don't have to buy into that game. I remember meeting with a friend one time who was telling me about who made the most money from our high school. Well, I didn't bring that conversation up. And later on, after that meeting, I thought to myself, I could have said, hey, I didn't know that was the game. I didn't know that was the goal. If that was the goal, I would have gone a different route in my life. I don't think I would have become a minister to compete in that game. See, comparison leads to this competition, which leads to pressure, which leads to tension, and creates a lot of havoc unnecessarily for people. We don't have to play that game. We don't need to look over our shoulder for our self-worth. We can recognize that I am a unique, individualized expression of Spirit. I'm unique and incomparable. Spirit doesn't have measurements. Spirit doesn't say, oh, well, she's more attractive than her. Spirit doesn't say, oh, he's more intelligent than him. Spirit's not doing that. That's the junk we've created. That's the junk we've created because of a sense of separation from our wholeness, a sense of separation from the truth, which is we're all unique expressions, incomparable expressions. And nature is a good example of this. Animals don't compare themselves with one another. You ever thought about that? A squirrel doesn't look at a rabbit and go, gee, people seem to like rabbits more than they like me as a squirrel. They think I'm a rat with a bushy tail. I wish I were a rabbit, a fluffy white rabbit. It would be so much better. No, they're not doing that. A giraffe isn't looking over at a big elephant with a trunk and going, gee, I wish I were an elephant. No. And you know what? Jesus said, look at the lilies of the field, how they grow. The lilies of the field. A lily is a little desert flower, an anemone. It's a small little flower. An anemone's not looking at a rose and going, oh, I wish I were a rose. A rose isn't going, look at me, little flower. I am so much bigger than you. I am more fragrant and more beautiful than you. No, nature's not comparing itself because we don't want to just see roses, do we? Of course not. We like to see lilies. We like to see buttercups. We like to see sunflowers. We like to see roses. We like to see dandelions. We like to see it all. We like to see greenery and everything. It's all important. And that's what we're saying today. You're important. You're a unique, incomparable expression of Spirit. Why look over your shoulder comparing yourself to others? You're not in a competition. The only competition that fully functioning individuals, as the late Abraham Maslow, the great psychologist, said, is to be better than your former self. That's it. You're here to grow, to be more of who you are. Why? you got to do something. You're here on this planet. It's a fascinating place, but you can't just sit on the beach. That gets boring. We got to do something with ourselves, and it's fun. It's fun to grow. It's fun to learn new things. It's fun to get better. It's fun to perfect your craft at whatever you're doing, to get better at it. It's fun. The late Swami Satchidananda used to say, do everything for the joy of it. Do everything for the joy of it. What if we did that? So many people are coming out of fear. They're acting out of fear. I knew a lady who was an author of several books. She was a speaker, and she was a film person. She made TV shows, and she admitted to me one time, she said, well, she shared, she didn't admit it. I didn't cross-examine her. She just said, I've lived a lot of my life in fear. I've accomplished a lot, but behind a lot of it has been fear. The fear of not accomplishing more, the fear of not doing more, the fear of not measuring up. And that's sad. That's because I believe it comes out of our conditioning of comparing ourselves to others, the conditioning of that we got to compete with others, and it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. Do you want to constantly be trying to compare yourself, see how you measure up, constantly trying to make yourself feel good based on the external? I don't. It's a waste of time. You know what? We're all going to die. Maybe our consciousness will continue on as the great saints and sages, but our achievements, what we do, what we have, all that's going to pass away eventually. I think it's a waste of time to be spending a lot of time comparing ourselves to others. But as I said, I like that idea of Satchidananda. Do everything for the joy of it. And as the psalmist said, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will satisfy the desires of your heart. Hey, if we did more for the joy of it, we'd be surprised by how well things go. Some of you know I like to compete in golf, talking about competition. I play on an amateur tour. Been doing it for years. And I remind myself, why am I doing this? Why compete? I could just go out, play a casual round of golf, and enjoy the scenery and be done with it. But instead, I compete. It's not for the trophies. It's for the challenge. I like the test of, can I be joyful? Can I be happy? Can I be detached from the results? Can I be relaxed? How well can I perform and express my potential in a so-called pressure situation? So in other words, I'm doing it for the joy of it. I'm not doing it for the trophy. I've won trophies. In fact, a few years ago, I was totally focused on not caring because I wanted to express my potential. And studies and experience has shown that when you really don't care, you focus, you put your energy into it, but you're not attached to the result, you perform better. You tend to perform better. So on this particular day, after the 18th hole, the guy says to me, Justin, I think you won. I'm like, what? I won? Yeah, I think you just won the tournament. And sure enough, I won the tournament. Now, I suspected something might have been up the way he kept looking at me on the putting green. I felt, this guy is really paying attention to what I'm doing. Why? Because he came in second. He was curious to see, is he going to make that putt? Is he going to miss the putt? I knew something might be up, but I wasn't focusing on that. I was just focusing on doing what I'm doing. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about you don't need to compete unless it's fun, and you don't need to compare yourself. We can focus on letting Spirit express uniquely as each one of us. There's no comparisons in nature. Spirit isn't having these measurements. We don't have to look over our shoulder to see how we're doing and get caught in that comparison trap. Rather, we can focus instead on letting Spirit express uniquely as us. I'd like you to just join me in knowing now. Maybe you'd like to stand up with me. Stand up with me and know out loud, I am unique and incomparable. In other words, there is no one exactly like you. Nobody. You're a unique expression of spirit. And spirit, that's intentional. You know, I like to think of it as like a big puzzle. I'm not a big puzzle person, but every piece in the puzzle is necessary. You don't have a repeated puzzle piece. That's almost a tongue twister. You don't have a repeated puzzle piece. No. Every little piece makes up the picture, just like you and just like me. Every piece is unique and incomparable. Let us affirm together. I am unique and incomparable. Together, I am unique and incomparable. Again, I am unique and incomparable. Now, a little softer. I am unique and incomparable. Let it sink into your subconscious. Now in a whisper, I am unique and incomparable. Now in a whisper, I am unique and incomparable. Let's get still for a moment. And as Jesus said, you are the light of the world. You are a unique expression of Spirit's light. This world is not complete without your light. You are part of the big picture, the big puzzle. You're an important piece in that puzzle. Regardless of what the appearances might be, your inner self, your inner growth is what this life is all about. It's the most important thing. You are here to wake up to your spiritual essence. You are here to let go of the blocks that are inside of you, the frustrations, one of which is comparing yourself to others. And as you release the comparison to others, you allow God's presence to flow more freely through you. You find more inner security. You find more self-confidence. You're more at peace in yourself. There's only one you. And there will always only be one you. In all of time, there has never been anyone exactly like you, and there never, ever will be again. That's worth. That's importance. You are spirit, living and expressing itself as you. You are unique and incomparable. And let us feel grateful for that truth. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for joining us today for our service here at the Unity Center of New York City. And I'd like to thank our musicians who are with us today, Chris Chickering from New Mexico and Annie Sims from California. Thank you both for sharing your wonderful music talents with us today in our service. And I want to thank you for being with us, those of you in our space today and those of you online. Would you please join me in affirming our prayer for protection? Together, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yea, God, yea, you. Amen. Thanks for being with us today, and God bless you. Namaste.